Members of the jury, would you like to take a brief break? Okay, we're going to be in recess for the next 10 minutes. Thank you.
Jury section.
Judge, I would next call Deputy Christopher Kofinas.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
The chair doesn't move, just the mic does.
May it please the court.
Yeah.
Judge. Good afternoon, Deputy. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Detective Christopher Williams,
And where are you currently employed?
the Osceola County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed there?
Since April 2016.
And what is your current duty there?
Currently, I work for the homicide unit at the Sheriff's Office.
And in what capacity were you working back on February 27th of 2022?
I was on patrol.
And prior to working at the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, did you have any prior law enforcement experience?
I was a military policeman for the Army for about 8 years.
I'm sorry, you say 8 years?
Yes.
And when you say a military policeman for the Army, is that also considered law enforcement as far as experience goes?
Yes.
And what sort of training did you go through to become a police officer?
I did the academy, also different advanced special courses.
And did you go through any training to become a military police officer?
Yes, boot camp.
Do you ever receive any training specifically regarding tasers?
Yes.
And can you go through that training for the jury?
I took a Taser course, also we introduced the Taser 7, we took another course for that within the agency.
And that last course you mentioned, did you take that in January 2022?
Yes.
That was the month before the incident at the Walla in February 22.
Yes, sir.
Did you receive any taser training in the military?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any advanced training on tasers? Were you an instructor or anything like that?
Yes, I was in Texas, I was a Taser instructor.
And what do you have to go through to become a taser instructor?
I had to take well, back then it was through Taser, but an instructor course. It was just like a 2-day course.
And the manufacturer of the tasers, they create the curriculum for those courses?
Yes.
And do they also create the curriculum for the course you took in January of 22?
I believe that was Axon, but yes, it was just a different.
Right. And as far as you know, is Axon the manufacturer of the Taser 7?
Yes.
And just at some point they changed the name of the company from Taser to Axon?
Yes.
So was it the same company putting on the training for you to become an instructor as the same company put on the training back in January 22?
Yes.
As a Taser instructor, do you receive more training on Tasers than an average law enforcement officer?
Yes.
And do you also receive firearms training?
Yes.
You receive training on tactics,
Yes.
including takedown tactics?
Yes.
And on training you took in January 22, is that specifically related to the Taser 7?
Yes.
And were you carrying a Taser 7 during the incident at the Wawa back on February 27, 2022?
Yes, I was.
As part of your training as a law enforcement officer, do you receive training on de-escalation techniques
Yes.
and techniques to gain compliance from resisting suspects?
Yes.
As part of your law enforcement officer training, are you taught specifically that threatening use of force is a valid de-escalation technique?
Yes.
Are you taught as a valid technique to gain compliance from a resisting suspect?
Yes.
And you were taught that through your training, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that the training both in the academy and what's put on through Axon?
Yes.
And as Osceola County Sheriff's detective, you're familiar with Osceola County Sheriff's Office policies?
Yes, sir.
And you're familiar with their policies regarding use of force and tasers? And is threatening the use of a taser according to Osceola County Sheriff's Office policies, is threatening the use of a taser a valid means of gaining compliance from a resisting suspect?
Yes, sir.
Is it also a valid means of de-escalation according to those same policies?
Yes.
Is it also a valid means of gaining compliance according to the Axon materials?
Yes.
And according to Osceola County Sheriff's Office policies, does that include up to even arcing the taser as a show of force to gain compliance?
Yes.
And generally speaking, is using your words less force than actually arcing a taser at somebody?
Yes.
During all your law enforcement officer training, have you heard the phrase muscle memory?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's when you do something a multitude of times where it basically becomes instinct, like a muscle.
And why is that important for law enforcement officers?
It just gets you to be able to react in time, for situations that need, an instant decision to be made.
As law enforcement officers, you sometimes find yourself in situations where you have to act instantly.
Yes, sir.
And in those situations, are you taught to rely on your training
Yes.
and your muscle memory?
Yes.
Is that because there's not always time to think?
Yes, sir.
As part of developing muscle memory, do you practice drawing your weapon the same way over and over?
Yes.
Many, many times?
Yes.
That's how you develop muscle memory?
Yes.
Did you receive any training as a law enforcement officer on apprehending suspects who have fled from the police?
Yes.
And what does that training tell you?
We have different types of training, pursuits, foot pursuits, just the takedowns, anything to get the suspect in compliance as well. Safely.
Does the fact that the suspect has fled from a deputy's attempted traffic stop, does that create any beliefs in your mind about the risk posed by that suspect?
Yes.
Objection to his beliefs and thoughts.
Sustained.
Based on your training as a law enforcement officer, do you receive any training about what you should assume about a suspect who has fled from a traffic stop?
Yes.
And what is that?
I mean, the risk, everything is heightened to the point where when someone flees in a traffic stop, anything can happen. So we're trained on how to deal with that fleeing suspect, or what to do and what not.
Are you if somebody flees from the police and then you later come into contact with them as a law enforcement officer, is it your job to arrest that person?
Yes.
And when, as law enforcement officer, based on all your training and experience, is it typical for officers to grab those suspects and bring them to the ground?
Yes.
And is that to gain control over that suspect
Yes.
in order to get them in handcuffs?
Yes.
Now, did you receive any training as a law enforcement officer about how you should respond to suspects who have been accused or been reported to have been accused of pulling firearms on civilians?
Yes.
What does your training tell you about what you should assume about such a suspect?
That they're armed?
And dangerous?
Yes.
Have you ever had to use your taser prior to February 27, 2022? Had you ever had to use your taser in the field before?
Yes.
Do you know approximately how many times?
I don't know.
When you use your taser, is it in response to criminal suspects actively resisting?
Yes.
If suspects aren't resisting or fleeing from the police, do you typically use a taser on them?
Say again, sorry?
Yeah, if a suspect is not resisting or fleeing from police, do you typically use a taser on them?
Yes. Correct.
Oh, sorry. I mean-
No, we don't use it.
Okay, that's what yeah, I thought maybe misheard. All right. Did you first become involved in this case when you were dispatched to the area of Michigan Avenue and Donegan Avenue in reference to an aggravated assault?
Yes.
Were you given a description of a suspect who pulled a gun on motorists?
Yes.
And in your mind as a law enforcement officer, is that the crime of aggravated assault?
Say that one more time, sorry.
Pulling a gun on motorists, based on your training experience as a law enforcement officer, is that the crime of aggravated assault?
Yes.
When you were in the area, were you listening to the police radio?
Yes.
And were various other deputies speaking over the radio?
Yes.
And were you transmitting over the radio?
Yes.
And was a helicopter star unit transmitting over the radio?
Yes.
And were you listening to updates from the star helicopter unit about updates about the suspect?
Yes.
At some point, did you locate a suspect that you believed matched the description of the person who committed the aggravated assault and firearm?
Yes.
And did you relay that information over the police radio?
I did.
And when I say police radio, I apologize, I mean the sheriff's office radio.
I stand.
Okay. And when you did that, did you use normal words like we're using, or did you speak in law enforcement codes?
Yes, in codes.
And what is the code for the Elsa County Sheriff's Office for aggravated assault?
53.
And if you said 53 ag, what would that mean?
Aggravated assault.
And is 53 ag, in fact, what you had said over the radio? You located the suspect of the 53 ag.
I believe so.
And so anyone who's trained in Osceola County Sheriff's Office codes would know that to mean aggravated assault.
Yes.
Did you attempt to effectuate a traffic stop on that suspect that you believe matched the description of the aggravated assault?
Yes.
And what happened when you tried to make that traffic stop?
The motorist did not stop. They fled my traffic stop.
When he fled, did he drive off normally, or is there anything unusual about the way he's driving?
From what I remember, they drove recklessly. Or he drove recklessly. A couple of wheelies and such, just not complying with the traffic stop.
And after he fled, what did you do?
I discontinued my lights and sirens for safety reasons. People off the street, I stopped, I think, in the street, just waited for everything to dismiss.
Is that the sheriff's office policy?
Yes.
And did you receive any information over the radio from the helicopter unit about whether they had located the suspect?
Yes.
And did they indicate to you that they had in fact located the same suspect that they saw fleeing from you?
Yes, they did.
And all the Osceola County deputies who were in that area would have all been on the same radio channel, correct?
Yes.
Listening to the same radio communications,
Yes.
including Deputy Crawford.
Yes.
Generally speaking, with radios, if one of you transmits, all the deputies in the area will hear it, correct?
Yes.
Based upon the actions of that suspect fleeing for you, did that create any concern for the safety of the civilians in the area in your mind?
Yes.
And why?
Just for the beginning of the call of that description of a motorist with a handgun pointing at civilians to him fleeing, everything came to mind, especially with the bystanders from there to wherever he was going.
Does your training teach you how you should think about such a suspect
Yes.
and how you should approach that such a suspect?
Yes.
And what does your training tell you?
To treat him like he's armed, treat him like he's dangerous. Have units to go out and start apprehending before you danger to the public.
Now, when you attempted a traffic stop on that suspect, he was later identified as Berto Bayerga. At that time, did you know 100% for sure that he had committed aggravated assault?
I did not. I was not.
Did you believe you had reasonable suspicion to stop and detain him to investigate the aggravated assault?
Yes, sir.
And is that the standard you need as a law enforcement officer to stop and detain someone?
Yes.
And is that what you were trying to do when you fled from your stop?
Yes.
In law enforcement, do you have to know 100% for sure somebody committed a crime before you investigate them for that crime?
No.
Would you ever be able to investigate any crime if that was the standard?
No.
Would you ever be able to stop any motorist if that was the standard?
No.
When you attempted to stop the suspect, Berto Bayerga, did you have your lights and sirens on?
Yes.
And do you turn those on to indicate to motorists that you were pulling them over?
Yes.
And you were driving a fully marked sheriff's office vehicle?
Yes.
And of course there's lights on tops?
Yes.
And does it say sheriff really big across the side?
It does.
And have other insignia marking it clearly as a law enforcement vehicle?
Yes.
After he fled from your vehicle, did you continue to receive updates from the helicopter unit?
Yes, it does.
Those updates include periodic updates about his location
Yes.
and his direction of travel.
Yes.
And did those updates inform you where you were going to drive your vehicle?
Yes.
Did it inform you how you were going to approach this subject?
Yes.
Did the helicopter eventually broadcast over the radio that they followed the suspect to the Wawa gas station located at 3951 Central Florida Parkway in Orlando?
Yes.
And did they indicate that he stopped there?
Yes.
Did you respond to that location?
I did.
In responding there, did you cross from Osceola to Orange County?
Yes.
And is that lawful?
Yes, and fresh pursuit.
When you first located the suspect who matched the description of the motorcyclist who pointed guns at motorists, you later found out was Berto Bayerga, was that at Donegan Avenue and Michigan Avenue?
Yes.
May I approach the overhead? Okay, I was gonna say, I thought that's what it's automatic. Let me just get this mark or something. Permission to approach the witness?
You do.
All right, Detective, I'm now approaching with what's been pre-marked for identification as defense F. Just generally, what do you recognize that to be?
Map of Osceola County.
And you work as a law enforcement officer in Osceola County?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the area, generally speaking?
Yes.
Are you able to locate on that map where Donegan Avenue and Michigan Avenue is?
I am.
Could you mark that by putting a big triangle around that area?
Triangle?
Yeah, I'm going to use two different shapes. And are you able to locate on that map where Old Dixie Highway and North Orange Blossom Trail is?
Yes.
Can you mark that with a big square?
Also, Old Dixie and which one?
North Orange Blossom Trail. Thank you. Your Honor, permission to retrieve.
Yeah.
Now, Detective, I believe you stated you would locate the suspect at Donegan Avenue and Michigan Avenue, correct?
Yes.
And then, did you first see his motorcycle at Old Dixie Highway and North Orange Blossom Trail? Approximately.
Old Dixie and Orange Blossom Trail?
Or North Orange Blossom Trail, I think.
It would have been in the area coming from Donegan and Orange Blossom
But
Trail.
it's maybe not the exact intersection, but that was what was relayed as the area, correct?
Yeah, so Old Dixie, Orange Blossom Trail, and Donegan, they all meet in this area.
And so, just to be clear for the jury, the triangle marks the area where you located the suspect of the aggravated assault and identified him as such, correct?
Yes.
And the square is the general area where it was reported that the aggravated assault happened, correct? How long would it take you by vehicle, whether it's a motorcycle or a car, to get from where it was reported where the aggravated assault happened to where you located the suspect?
Seconds.
Do you know approximately how much time it elapsed between the report coming in of the aggravated assault and you locating the suspect?
I don't know.
Would you agree that there was enough time for the suspect to get from the one location to the other?
Yes.
Does the fact that the suspect was found so close to the scene of where the crime was reported have any effect on you as a law enforcement officer in making your determination about whether or not there is reasonable suspicion that that person committed the crime?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
May we approach, Judge? When you first arrived at the Wawa gas station that we've previously been discussing, did you exit your vehicle and make contact with the suspect?
I did.
That person, someone that was later identified as Mr. Berito Vallarta.
Yes.
After you exited your vehicle, did you go to assist Deputy Crawford in arresting the suspect?
Yes.
When you made contact with the suspect, was he in a struggle against Deputy Crawford?
Yes.
Was he complying with Deputy Crawford's commands?
No.
Where were his hands?
Underneath them. Top underneath.
As a law enforcement officer, based on your training and experience, does that cause you any concern?
It does, yes.
Did it at the time?
Yes, sir.
And what concern did it cause you at the time?
Well, at the time, we had reason to believe that he possibly had a firearm. Most suspects had that in their waistband. We were trying to get his hands out of that.
Did the fact that he fled from your stop have any effect on your mindset either?
Yes.
And what effect did that have?
That he was not going to apply. He was going to lose.
Was he actively resisting, that suspect that is, Deputy Crawford, and all the other deputies throughout the entire incident up until when the fire was ignited.
Yes.
And he never complied with orders to give up his hands?
No.
Did he struggle to keep his hands under his body?
Yes.
At one point, were you pulling on one of his arms?
I was, yes.
As you pulled his arm out, what was he doing in response?
Trying to pull it back.
Why were y'all trying to get his hands out from underneath him?
We were trying to get him in handcuffs as
Were you-
soon as possible.
Were you ever able to do that while you're struggling with him on the ground?
No.
Were you assisting Deputy Crawford in a lawful arrest?
Yes.
For what crimes?
Fleeing the living, reckless driving.
Did you also believe you had reasonable suspicion, at least, that he was the suspect in the aggravated assault?
Yes.
And when you have reasonable suspicion somebody committed a crime, are you allowed to detain that person in handcuffs?
Yes.
Is that for the purpose of questioning them and investigating the crime?
Yes.
Did you deploy your agency-issued Taser 7 against the suspect?
Yes.
When did you do that?
Shortly after I made contact with the deputy and the suspect.
Did you deploy it toward his upper torso?
Yes.
Did that result in the suspect ceasing his resistance and complying with your efforts to detain him?
It did not. No.
I think I should reword that. Did it result in him ceasing his resistance and compliance of Deputy Crawford's efforts to detain him?
No.
Because at that time, you hadn't gone hands-on yet, right?
Right.
After you deployed your Taser on him, did he comply and stop resisting?
He did not.
Did he continue resisting?
Yes.
Did he continue to have his hands in his waistband?
Yes.
At that time, had anyone been able to confirm whether that he did not have a firearm?
No.
Based on your training, based on all the information you had at the time, were you taught to make any assumptions about whether or not he had a firearm?
No.
During your training as a law enforcement officer, do you receive any training about how to interact with people who you receive reports have committed aggravated assaults?
Yes.
Are you trained to presume that they are armed?
Should ask and answer.
Same.
As a law enforcement officer, do you receive training on where suspects commonly carry firearms?
Yes.
Are you trained they are commonly carried in waistbands?
Yes.
Did this suspect having his hand in the area of his waistband cause you concern for your safety?
Yes, it did.
Did it cause you concern for the safety of others in the area?
Yes.
Did that include the other law enforcement officers?
Yes.
Did that include the civilians?
Yes.
Why?
Because anything can happen with a firearm.
After you deployed your Taser the first time, what did you do after that?
I initially did a drive stun, and then shortly after went hands on.
And can you explain to the jury exactly how you did that process of that drive stun?
After deploying the cartridge of the taser to the upper torso, I came in with a drive stun to complete the circuit. To try to gain compliance to mobilize.
Were you successful? Did that in fact gain compliance?
No.
Did he continue, I say he, the suspect, continue resisting?
Yes.
Did he continue keeping his hands in his waistline area?
Yes.
Did he continue resisting efforts to put him in handcuffs?
Yes.
Now, after you deployed your Taser the second time, did your Taser end up on the ground?
Yes.
Did it end up on the ground next to the suspect?
A little bit away from him. But I don't know the distance.
Was it within reach of the suspect?
It could have been, yeah.
Now, if there was video evidence showing that it was right next to the suspect's arms, do you believe that would be more accurate than your memory?
If it was right next to his arms.
Yes, right next to his arm.
I don't know.
Okay, I understand you don't remember. How long ago was this? Would you agree we're going on 3 years from this incident?
Yeah.
So if the jury had seen video evidence that the taser was right next to his right arm, do you believe that'd be more reliable than your recollection 3 years later?
Chair shouldn't comment on evidence.
Assistant.
When the taser ended up on the ground, did you intentionally place it there, or did you just lose control of it during the struggle?
I intentionally placed it.
As a law enforcement officer, do you receive training about the importance of maintaining control of your weapons during struggles with suspects?
Yes.
Does that training tell you you're supposed to maintain control of your weapon during a struggle with a suspect
Yes.
and not allow a suspect to be able to gain control of that weapon?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because it becomes a danger to yourself and everyone else.
Now, at the point you put down your taser, were there multiple other deputies assisting?
Yes.
Based on the testimony you had just given about the training you received, would you agree that placing your taser down when you did was against your training?
Yes.
Based on the training you received, specifically about tasers, do you receive training about the dangers of deploying tasers around gas pumps?
Yes.
Do you admit that you deployed your taser twice at that gas pump against this suspect?
Yes.
And did that go against your training?
It did, yes.
Now, in the situation you found yourself in, how would you describe it when everyone's hands-on with this suspect?
Chaotic.
Do you agree that the entire struggle with this suspect lasted just a matter of seconds?
Yes.
Or would you agree it was very fast-moving?
Yes.
Do you agree it didn't give everyone a lot of time to critically think? In situations like that, are law enforcement officers taught to rely on their training?
Yes.
Are they taught to rely on their muscle memory?
Yes.
Did Mr. Reto Bayerga ever stop resisting efforts to arrest him prior to the fire igniting?
No.
After the fire started, did you observe what was happening with Deputy Crawford?
Yes.
And what was that?
After the fire started,
Yes.
yeah, he was treatment for home.
Was he on fire?
Yes.
Was he engulfed in flames?
Yes.
How was he reacting to being on fire? Did he? So he wasn't cool, calm, and collected?
No, he wasn't.
Did he have a taser in his hand?
I don't believe so.
At the time the fire erupted, were you able to see where the taser was?
No.
When Deputy Crawford was on fire, did you assist him?
I did, yes.
Did you tell him to stop, drop, and roll?
Yes.
Attempt to help out the flames?
Yes.
At that point, did he appear to be in distress?
Yes.
Did he appear to be concerned about anything else?
Relevance.
Sustained.
Here, may we approach?
Sure.
So going back, so when Deputy Crawford was on fire, did it appear he was occupied with anything else other than the fire?
No.
Did you hear anything like a taser cycling immediately prior to the fire starting?
No.
Did you first take notice of the gasoline when Deputy Crawford had called out the warning about it?
I mean, I heard it. I didn't see it.
Was it only maybe mere seconds between you observing the gasoline and seeing the fire starting?
Yes.
Did you ever observe Deputy Crawford deploy a taser?
I did not know.
After the fire was extinguished, you located your taser, right?
I can't remember if I did or not.
Do you remember whether you collected your taser at the scene?
I did not. I believe that forensics or came up collected it.
Brandon, may we approach? And Detective Kafinas, would it potentially help refresh your memory as to the issue of whether or not you collected your taser if you were able to view your body camera footage from the Wawa gas station on February 27, 2022?
Would it help, really?
Would it help refresh your memory as to whether you may have collected your own taser?
Yes.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you retire to the jury room for a few moments, and I'll bring you back in just a minute.
Jury sensitive.
Yeah, it's just kind of after the fire, so, well, I mean, I can just go over and show them how to do it on the big screen.
No, show them this one, because that way you can authenticate it when we use that.
Christian approach?
Yeah.
Is that the same video on USB?
Yes. I'm not on the exact timestamp, so it's hard to I mean, it's kind of requires he wants to
Yeah, that's the right video. Yeah, that's the provided video, so for sure. Yeah, that's my error.
So is this something I can?
No,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry.
sorry.
Can you just eject that?
Yeah.
So that you should.
Oh, right, yes.
Because I have a file with me.
That's perfect.
your desktop.
Well, we can use your that's easier.
So that's why. Yeah, I copied it to the wrong. I'll take it. I had the wrong file.
Oh, okay, that's what
But I dragged over.
every single thing I need. Second, work this.
Question.
They quit.
Question.
Oh, okay. No. You're gonna have Okay, Deputy, you could do me a favor and just make sure you speak up and speak very clearly, which is of the person hearing you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Will you file that for me, please?
I don't know the exact times, we're just going to go off a little bit.
It's refined too.
Perfect, okay. And
I guess there's gonna be since and later they collect my taser. Correct. I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Barber, to be clear, what was it that you showed him in order to refresh his recollection?
yes, so for the record, Deputy Kafinas, do you recognize this to be a segment of your body camera video from February 27, 2022?
Yes.
And after watching this, has that helped refresh your memory as to whether or not you had collected your taser from the ground at Wawa on that day?
Yes.
After the fire was extinguished?
Yes.
I'll give you 100 for your record. Thank you.
And Carl, will you just leave the USB with him?
Yeah. That's what
No, just
Oh,
the
just
USB,
USB. I
just so
gotcha.
you can say it's the same one as last time.
Correct.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge, I should ask permission. I
You're
apologize.
fine.
Jury Secretary.
Members of the jury, I received your note. That's what goes up before you so you can speak up to make sure that y'all can hear. If in the future that happens, if you could just please raise your hand and let me know that you're clear, we'll be able to help you out. You may proceed, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Kafinas, as the jury was out, did you have a chance to review a portion of your body camera video from February 27th, 2022?
Yes.
And was it a portion of the video after the flames had been extinguished.
Yes.
And did viewing that video help refresh your memory as to whether or not you had collected your own taser from the ground at the Wawa after the fire?
Yes.
Okay. And so did you in fact collect your own taser and pick it up at the Wawa after the fire?
Yes, I did.
Now, on that day, were you working as a crime scene technician?
I was not.
Was a crime scene technician later called to the scene?
I believe so.
And did that crime scene technician place evidence markers next to where all the evidence was?
I believe so.
And was that crime scene technician able to place an evidence marker where your taser had ended up on the ground?
I'm not sure.
Based on all your training experience as a law enforcement officer, do weapons like tasers or firearms sometimes get accidentally discharged during physical struggles with suspects?
Yes.
With the taser, how does it operate? You just push a button and it discharges?
I mean, it works similar to like what a firearm would.
Does the Taser 7 have a fully mechanical trigger like a Glock firearm, or is it more of an electronic button?
But a trigger.
Is it a mechanical trigger, or does it send an electrical signal when it's depressed?
Electric signal.
So that was what I was asking. I just want to clear that up. So it's not a mechanical trigger like a gun then?
No.
Based on your observations, did any other deputies besides you draw any tasers while trying to apprehend the suspect at the Wawa?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Are tasers considered weapons?
Yes.
Are they designed to incapacitate people?
Yes.
Did you intentionally deploy your taser at the Wawa on February 27th, 2022?
Yes, I did.
If two people are touching each other and one of them is hit with a taser, will that electrical current flow into the other person?
That shouldn't be on the scope of this, any expertise in this stuff.
Stay.
Okay. You testified earlier you were a taser instructor, correct?
In Texas, yes.
And you received additional training over that which a regular officer would receive as far as how tasers function, correct?
Yes.
And how they operate.
Yes.
Did you ever receive anywhere in your training any information about whether if two people are touching and one of them is hit with a taser, that electrical current will transfer to the other person?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, maybe that's a little wordy. In your training, did you ever receive any instruction about how the electrical flow from the taser can move from one person to another if they're touching?
No.
As a detective with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, are you familiar with the policies of that office?
Yes.
And as a taser instructor, you're familiar with the training materials put out by the manufacturer of the taser?
Yes.
Based on Osceola County Sheriff's Office policies, is it an acceptable technique to gain compliance from a resisting suspect to verbally threaten the use of a taser?
Yes.
According to the Axon taser training materials, is threatening the use of a taser a valid technique to gain compliance from a resisting suspect?
Yes.
Have you threatened the use of force, specifically a taser, to gain compliance from resisting suspects?
Yes, I have.
Is that something that's very common for law enforcement officers to do?
Yes.
Is it always followed up by an officer actually using the force?
No.
Is that because it's essentially a bluff to gain compliance?
Yes.
That is something you were trained to do.
Yes.
Now, did you ever give an interview to an Osceola County Sheriff's detective regarding this case?
I did, yes.
All right, was that back on May 3rd of 2022?
I believe so.
Did that detective tell you that everything you said?
Objection.
Approach. So back during your interview with that detective in May of 22, did she tell you at the beginning of the interview that everything you said would be turned over to Internal Affairs?
I believe so.
And for the jury, can you explain what Internal Affairs is as it relates to law enforcement agencies?
It's an investigation and the wrongdoing that I may have done, basically.
And were you in fact subjected to an Internal Affairs investigation regarding your involvement at the Wawa gas station?
Yes, yes, sir.
And was it specifically regarding your use of the taser at the gas pumps?
Yes.
And were you found to have violated department policy?
Objection, relevance, minutes.
Sustained.
Nothing further, Judge.
Mr. Rose? Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. How you doing, David? Hang in there.
I'm just going to remind you to speak up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Detective David Crawford is your friend, isn't he?
Yes, yes.
In fact, when you arrived yesterday, and then on every break, you were speaking with his wife and family outside. I'm not saying there's anything appropriate with it. I'm just asking.
Object, he's not letting the witness answer.
Just remind counsel to allow the witness to answer before certain questions.
Reminder her, yes, Your Honor.
When I've seen him, I've spoken to him, yes.
Because you're not just friends with him, you're friends with the family.
I know the family. I would say I'm more friends with Crawford, but yes.
How long have you guys been friends?
I don't know. I don't know how long it's been.
A while?
For a while, yes.
Did you meet him in law enforcement?
I did, yes.
Do you remember meeting with me in my office as we prepared for potential testimony in this case?
Yes.
Would you agree that you expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that he was being prosecuted?
Yeah, I do, yes.
You don't think it's fair?
I do not.
Now, you're aware that the Osceola County Sheriff's Office has a policy about the use of tasers in and around flammable substances. You aware of that?
Yes.
Would you agree that it's very clear that you cannot use a taser around flammable substances?
Yes.
Did I hear in your testimony here today that you reported on the radio that you were behind the suspect matching the description for the aggravated assault?
Yes.
Have you actually gone back and listened to the radio traffic?
No, I haven't.
Is it possible that that's not on the radio traffic?
I'm not sure.
So if you're not sure, would you agree with me that it's possible that it's just not there?
That I said that
Right.
I found, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
That you said that you found the suspect of the aggravated assault.
Found the suspect, though?
Right.
Matching the description, I believe I said. I don't.
Okay. So best case, you said you found a suspect matching the description.
Yes.
Do you remember the radio traffic from that day?
I don't.
No recollection at all.
I mean, I have faint memories of what happened, what occurred, but I don't know exactly what came out of my mouth, no, sir.
I'm not trying to beat you up, okay?
Yes, sir.
You, do you remember there being multiple different descriptions of the suspect?
I just remember the bike description, that's all I remember, as of right now.
Anything beyond that, we need to listen to the traffic. Is that fair?
Yes.
When you first started deploying your taser at the Wawa, you didn't know there was gas on the ground.
I did not know.
You later became aware that there was gas on the ground.
Yes, sir.
Is that why you put the taser down?
Yes.
Because you didn't want to start a fire?
Safety concerns, yes, I didn't want us to catch fire.
Do you regret the decision to use the taser at all?
I do.
Now, you were one of the officers who ended up charging Gene Barreto Bayerga with a crime, right?
Yes.
And you charged him with resisting without violence.
Yes.
Are you aware of the other charges he was charged with?
The fleeing and eluding, and I believe it was a reckless.
He was not charged with aggravated assault and firearm.
No.
There was never sufficient evidence to even charge him.
No, they didn't charge me for aggravated assault.
You're also aware that there was never a firearm found that day, right?
No.
No, there was not a firearm, or no, you're not aware?
No, we didn't locate a firearm.
And you remained on scene for some time, right?
Yes.
You now remember picking up your taser after the fire. Is that right?
Yes.
And you remember having viewed the video?
Yes.
May I put you in, Trent? So I asked it to be kept here just so you could remember. Is this the same USB that had the video on it?
Yes.
Did this have your body-worn camera of after the incident and you collecting the actual taser?
Yes,
Does that appear to fairly and accurately depict the video from that day?
yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask the court to mark it, and then I'd ask the court to admit it as the next number.
Okay.
Your Honor, objection, may we approach?
Sure.
So it's AC, and Your Honor is admitting it?
So it was marked for identification as states AC, and that is Deputy Kafinas' body cam, right?
Body and dash cam from after the incident.
All right, so there's no objection, Mr. Barber?
Yes, I withdraw my objection.
Okay. And so that'll be admitted as states 23.
May I publish this one, please? While I'm doing this, I'll ask you to do two things at once, all right? My question, maybe I'm doing two things at once. Your discharge of the taser didn't spark the fire, right?
No, Lisa.
No, because you discharged it several seconds before the fire and the flame started.
Yes.
So I'm first going to publish your dash cam video, okay? If you're going to have to rotate, it's a little awkward, I apologize, okay? Is that your dash cam?
Yes.
Where your vehicle was parked that day, right?
Yes.
Okay.
lights again? Permission to approach, Your Honor. So the state showed you the first, or they paused this video the first time your body camera video was pretty far away, right?
Yeah.
And they asked you if it looked like, oh, maybe it was 6 inches or a foot, no more.
Yes.
Now that you've given me a chance to walk all the way up, can you now see that it's actually several feet from where the gas pump was?
Yes.
Because when things are far away, it's harder to judge distances, correct?
Yes.
Now, you had said that the Camaro was in front of your car, correct?
Yes.
Now, where that Camaro was parked left a very narrow space for where the deputies were struggling with the suspect, correct?
Yes.
Now, looking back at your vehicle, would you say that vehicle is rather close to where the gas pumps are? And I'm not talking about from this distance. I'm talking about how much space is between the passenger side of your vehicle and the gas pumps. Would you agree that there's maybe a couple feet in between your car and the gas pumps?
Yeah.
Would you also agree there was only a couple feet between the gas pumps and the Camaro?
Yes.
So this evidence is consistent with the Taser being discarded under the Camaro, correct?
You said under the Camaro?
Correct, discarded to the left underneath the Camaro from where you found it.
Can you repeat
Yeah,
that?
I can break it down a little more.
Remember
So from where the vehicle was, we've now established it's Camaro.
Yeah.
There was only a couple feet between that Camaro and the gas pump, correct?
Yes.
And in that space, there was the suspect on the ground, correct?
Yes.
And there were 3 deputies.
Yes.
In a very confined space.
Yes.
Would you agree that that Camaro was no more than maybe a couple feet from that gas pump?
Yes.
So you would agree that this evidence is consistent with the Taser being discarded under the Camaro?
Yes. Where was it?
When you picked up, and I'm making this judge.
Oh, would you turn
When you picked up your Taser, was it melted, the plastic?
I don't remember. Sorry.
All right, fair enough. Never mind, we just move past that. Now, the state specifically asked you if you thought it was fair that Deputy Crawford is being prosecuted, correct?
Yes.
And you stated you did not.
Correct.
Why is that?
Because from what I understand, is that they didn't want to charge the motorcyclist, the other the suspect, because of his injuries. When both Crawford and that suspect both received significant injuries, right? Why? How is it, impartial, right? If you're charging one and not the other, that's in my opinion.
Did Deputy Crawford, according to your observations and your memory, did he ever intentionally deploy a Taser?
No,
Did you intentionally deploy a Taser?
I intentionally deployed a taser. Yes.
Did that factor in to your statement that you didn't think it was fair?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Did that factor in to you thinking it wasn't fair, him being prosecuted?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because I don't know what happened, right? I don't know what Crawford did, and I don't know his side of the story. And I'm the one that tased him, so I don't know what happened after that. I can't judge Crawford on what his actions,
Here, may we approach? Now, you stated earlier under cross that you couldn't remember exactly word for word what you're saying over the radio, correct?
Right.
But you do remember announcing over the radio that you located the suspect that you thought matched the description of aggravated assault
Yes, from my memory, I remember.
in some manner of words.
Yes.
Now, you stated under cross that you regretted using your taser that day, correct?
Yes.
If you had never drawn your taser and it had never ended up next to the suspect, Deputy Crawford,
Motion calls for speculation.
Can you approach this?
yes. Going back to your regret of using your taser that day,
Yes.
if you had never used your taser and set it down next to the suspect, it never would have been within reach of the suspect, correct?
Yes.
And we've established that based upon training, it goes against training and policy to allow your weapon to be within grasp of a resisting suspect, correct?
Yes.
Now, the state asked you about whether there was ever sufficient evidence to prosecute the suspect, Brave de Baerga, for aggravated assault, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, as a law enforcement officer, get to make charging decisions, or is that the state attorney's office?
Oh, like for that, I would make the decision.
All right.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, yes, I would make the decision to charge them. Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Who files formal charges against criminal defendants? Sheriff's deputies or state attorneys?
Sheriff's deputies.
To file formal charges?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So let's break that down a little bit. If a sheriff's deputy,
Relevance.
It's the same.
Your Honor, may we approach? Now, is information you learn after an incident helpful? Let me rephrase that. When you're in the field, having to make decisions as a police officer, do you have to rely on information known to you at that time?
Yes.
Are you personally able to tell the future?
No,
Do you have any psychic abilities?
I do not.
So what happens later after an incident is not relevant at all to how a deputy needs to react in any specific moment when it's happening.
Objection calls for legal conclusion.
So say,
So since you can't tell the future, you have to rely only exclusively on information known to you at the time and your training as a law enforcement officer, correct?
Yes.
So any information learned later does not assist an officer at the moment in making their decisions.
At the moment, no.
So the fact that a firearm was not recovered from a suspect is not relevant at the moment that the deputies were struggling with that suspect and determining how to deal with that suspect.
Objection, legal conclusion.
Can you rephrase the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Say it.
So the fact that a firearm was not found on him later, that is not relevant to the officers at the moment when they're making their decisions, trying to determine how to deal with the suspect when they were struggling with them.
Yes.
Thank you.
so are we finished?
I am finished. I second judge.
We thank you for your time this afternoon. Please sit down.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. So it's my understanding that the defense has one additional